Swordsman VR. Yeah, remember Swordsman? It was more of an arena fighter than anything else, with tons of weapons to use and stats to upgrade. But the core gameplay consists mostly of enemies that spawn into a room that you have to attack, block, and parry to take down. Now, if you're like me, you probably thought this was a pretty cool concept at launch, but one that you couldn't help think was the foundation for something more, something bigger and better. I mean, imagine these cool physics in a game with actual levels like a dungeon crawler. Imagine finding treasure chests or having an inventory to store potions in. Well, no matter how lofty our expectations were, I never thought we'd get a game like Legendary Tales so soon. A co-op game that's just as much fun to play solo as it is with friends, that never stopped reminding me of Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance, Diablo, and Dark Souls. And even 40 hours later, I still think those are accurate comparisons. Okay, so let's start at the beginning. After creating your character and adding some basic skill points, Legendary Tales drops you into a campsite with seemingly so much to do. There are NPCs, quests to take on, items to buy, and almost nothing is explained, even if you played through the tutorial. Hitting triangle brings up a menu that has your inventory, skills, quests, magic, and stats that's so overwhelming, it feels like you're never going to understand it all. Plus, you can head off in so many different directions with no maps to lead the way, that it very much feels like, okay, what the fuck am I supposed to do now? And that feeling doesn't go away for a while. But you know what? It's been so long since I've felt this way in a video game that I actually welcomed the mystery, and enjoyed knowing that I'd still be learning stuff hours from now. Most VR games strip out deep mechanics in favor of simple run-and-gun action and VRAF mechanics, but Legendary Tales is attempting to do it all, and give you something you'd expect from a full-length flat-screen game, and make it work in VR. And you know what? I think they pretty much succeeded. And honestly, you shouldn't worry about how everything works right off the bat anyway. You'll learn to craft weapons and make potions later, once you've gotten comfortable with some of the basics. So head out and explore and just see what this world has to offer. Now, sometimes when I do these reviews, I worry that I spend too much time focusing on the graphics, but I do have to say that I was kind of blown away when stepping into Legendary Tales for the first time. It'd be easy to point out how sparse and barren the world looks, with repeating textures on the ground and cave walls. But saying that would be ignoring the great visual style, the buttery smooth frame rate running at a native 90 FPS, and the high resolution that you just wouldn't expect in a game like this. The whole thing's pretty impressive, with draw distances that stretch way out into the horizon, with only occasional pop-in here and there. And the scale of being a tiny human in a massive cave like this is really impressive. As if that wasn't enough, there's an epic score associated with each area and every boss fight that frequently made me stop in my tracks and say out loud, "Damn, this is awesome." And sometimes I was just saying that to myself, because as much fun as I had playing Legendary Tales with AJ, Wes, and Miles, sometimes I just wanted to go it alone and spend hours grinding for that next spell or unlocking the next perk on my skill tree. Sure, it's lonelier that way, but I'm okay with that. Plus, the difficulty does scale depending on how many people you're playing with, so you'll never find yourself in some impossible situation just because you decided to go it alone. That said, as a Magic user, I found playing with Miles in the UK wasn't so great for me, because when he was hosting, the minuscule amount of lag it created caused my fireballs to be almost impossible to aim properly.
Unless you want to try
how it goes.
Yeah.
Let's see if it works.
Which wasn't nearly as much of an issue when AJ hosted here in the States. It's not something that'll affect everyone. A lot of Magic basically auto-aims, and you can rapid-fire magic arrows at enemies with reckless abandon, and using weapons like bows and arrows and swords won't be compromised with a little lag. So just keep this in mind when you're deciding who's going to host your multiplayer game.
We never went up here, did we?
Now the setup here is that you're dropped into an open world, which seems simply massive at first, but fast forward 20 hours or so and you realize it's not quite the sprawling world it once appeared to be. But it's a pretty good size and for the most part paced fairly well, keeping you from venturing too far out until you've leveled up accordingly. Plus the various dungeons you encounter along the way can feel endless, especially without a map system, but you'll spend quite a bit of time in each one, learning the layout and figuring out where to go to finish all your side quests. For a game that's so deep mechanically, you might be surprised just how minimal the story is here. There are NPCs that have quests for you, but it's all pretty basic and delivered via text on the screen, which I strangely prefer to constant cutscenes or long conversations with voiced characters. It means you're never taken out of the game, and if you forget what you're doing or where you should be headed next, it's all detailed in your quest menu. There's not a ton of enemy variety here, mostly consisting of skeletons and goblins. Some are archers and some have swords and shields, and some throw stuff at you. But despite that, it never gets old, which is really fortunate because like most dungeon crawlers, Legendary Tales is a grind fest in the best possible way, because there's always another skill you're dying to unlock or some spell that you're using that you want to upgrade. Speaking of which, there's way more to unlock here than you'd probably expect. There are skill trees for attack power, dexterity, health and mana regeneration, passive skills, active skills, and just a ton of magic spells. This is exactly what we've been asking for in VR. An actual RPG. Knowing I'd be spending a lot of my time playing solo, I was going for a full-on battle mage build, so I divided my upgrades between unlocking new spells and boosting my attack power. I loved alternating between casting area of attack fireballs into groups of enemies until my MP was depleted, then switching over to a sword and shield that replenished 5 mana with every kill. But that's just me. You can play however you want and build whatever kind of character that you want to play as. The only exception would be if you want to be a healer, which certainly feels like an omission when playing with friends, but obviously not so much by yourself. There's so much loot to find here, all with different perks and abilities, that you'll constantly be comparing what you found to what you're using and then selling the rest, or saving higher level weapons for when you're strong enough to equip them.
As well. That's so cool.
Like I mentioned at the start of the review, Legendary Tales feels like it took the awesome physics-based sword fighting mechanics from Swordsman VR and made a full-length RPG out of it. But I actually think the fighting feels better here. Bashing enemies in the face with your shield to stun them, parrying with your weapons, and landing power slashes, stabs, or pounding them over the head with the hilt of your sword all feels right. And the VRAF mechanics are here in full force too. Some of the adaptive triggers and haptics could certainly be better, but I do swear that the haptics and the sense controllers allow you to actually feel where on your shield an arrow hits. It's pretty crazy. Plus there are levers to pull, buttons to press, ropes to climb, which helps to make up for the immersion that you might lose from cycling through menus every few minutes.
Wow, they got me good there.
Now look, playing games before launch means that sometimes I become an involuntary beta tester. Depending on the game, I'll deal with all sorts of stuff that hopefully you won't have to. And with Legendary Tales, I wouldn't be honest with you if I didn't tell you that at one point I lost 2 full hours of grinding due to a saved game bug, and then the following day, I lost my character completely. This was a character I spent 35 hours building, grinding away tirelessly with. Now, the team claims to have fixed all the bugs after I reported them, so we're kind of taking them at their word here because it's impossible for me to prove that the bug is gone. So yeah, I was disappointed to lose all that progress. But I'd made so many mistakes leveling up my character that I'm actually happy to have an excuse to start over from scratch, with a new focus and a better understanding of what skills to unlock and what spells I want to focus on learning and upgrading. But it also made me realize how insane it is that Legendary Tales doesn't allow you to respec your character. It's something I gladly would have spent all of my in-game currency to make happen. It's also a little surprising that there's no option to play seated, although you can anyway, your character will just be low to the ground. And there's no crouch button. And crouching is something you'll have to do pretty frequently to fight goblins and traverse the world. And if you're playing multiplayer, you can expect a few crashes here and there, especially when traveling in and out of dungeons. But so far, we fortunately haven't lost any progress because of it. I feel like I'm barely scratching the surface of Legendary Tales with this review. It absolutely overwhelmed me at first, but every few hours I felt like I learned something new and understood the game just a little bit better. And the more I learned, the more I loved my time in this world. For a game built from the ground up for VR, we weren't expecting something with the depth of, say, Skyrim, but what we got was just as addictive, has a far better VR implementation, and if I wasn't playing it for review, I would have spent weeks playing this. But with the new Game Plus mode, with even more legendary weapons waiting for me, I'll be back in Legendary Tales for another 40 hours soon enough.